Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's Research America Alliance discussion. I'm Russ Paulsen. I'm the new CEO of Research America, and I want to thank you all for joining us today um, and for your engagement with Research America. And if you're not engaged with Research America, we've got a solution for that. So let's see, our second slide, I think, has the Research America membership guy. Oh, we'll put it in the chat. Don Cook is our Associate Director of Membership, and reach out to Don. If you're not a member, follow on these social media channels. There are so many today, but we are endeavor to be on all of them. And today is a webinar format. So if you're used to the Zoom normal thing, this is the webinar form where you need to type your questions into the Q&A box, and we'll get to as many as we can. So, housekeeping over. I am beyond excited to introduce our guest speaker and co-panelist this morning, Dr. Alicia Jackson. Dr. Jackson is the new or relatively new director of the Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health, ARPA-H. And it's an agency that in my previous job, I had a little bit of engagement in trying to help design that with a whole bunch of really smart people giving advice to folks on Capitol Hill. And we are so thrilled with what has happened so far with ARPA-H. Um, Dr. Jackson, maybe just a little bit about, for those of our audience who don't know about ARPA-H, well, maybe a little bit about that and a little bit about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Welcome to everyone who's joined. This is a huge part of my role here, which is engaging with the community, finding the best minds, finding the best ideas to bring to ARPA-H. My own background, I'm a PhD in material science and engineering. I spent nearly 6 years at DARPA, the original ARPA, both as a program manager there and then as the founding deputy director of the biotech office there. It was the best time of my entire life until now, I would say. It's really an incredible organization. ARPAs are built like nothing else in the federal government, and I don't think there's any other organization on earth that can really take the same type of high impact risks that an ARPA can. We're specifically built for that, and I'll get into that some more. Um, After that, I built two companies from the ground up. One was a medical device company, and the other was a telehealth company focused on delivering care for women going through perimenopause and menopause. And I had always said I would come back to government, but only for an ARPA job. And I was very lucky that I got the call and was asked to be director of ARPA-H. And immediately I accepted. I couldn't imagine a better role, especially given my background being at an ARPA, really understanding the ins and outs of it and how it works. And then second, my roles in healthcare and just really understanding that this was the perfect time where an ARPA model could make a huge difference in healthcare breakthroughs for whatever Americans might be facing. Of course, we have NIH, we have BARDA, but we don't have really the same thing in terms of an organization really focused on very fast impacts that can really drive something, breakthroughs from lab to patient in years and not decades. And I think this is a perfect time for it. And so it was quite a pleasure to be able to join. Um, I've been here since October 20th when I was first sworn in. A little bit of background on ARPA-H or the ARPA model in general. What really sets it apart from everything else is its mission, which is to deliver high impact breakthroughs to the people of America, as I said, in years and not decades. And in order to do that requires three things. Number one, it requires incredible focus and being able to drive world-changing impact. We call it making a dent in the universe. And in order to do that, you need to be able to take and manage incredible technical risk and scientific risk. And a lot of how ARPA-H is organized is the how we are able to do that. And that includes everything from having very, very technically competent program managers who are the ones who develop the programs from the ground up to the way that we manage our programs. So unlike NIH or NSF, we don't give grants. All of our Awards are essentially contracts. We call them other transactions, and that means that there's milestones along the way, there's very clear goals, and there's tight timelines. And so what that enables us to do is through active program management, really work with all the teams. We're partners with them. But if we find that a certain technical or scientific path is not bearing fruit or bearing out like we thought it was, we can turn that aspect down and then double down on those aspects that are. And so that's often new for a lot of researchers to learn, but it enables us to concentrate capital really where it's going to make the biggest difference. Second most important thing that we have is speed. So we're a very, very lean organization, as DARPA is. We have less than 150 feds in the organization. About 30 of them today, and we want to move up to 50, are program managers. And everything's built around the program manager. The only reason the rest of the org is here is to support these, the kings and queens of ARPA, which are the program managers. And they're the ones who are actively coming up with great programs. They are only here for 3 years at a time, so they're term limited. So we get people from academia, from startups, from industry, sometimes from other parts of government who come in because they want to get something done. And they can't get it done in the place that they are. They have a big idea that's going to require multiple teams working on it, that's going to require a lot of effort. And so they come here to get it done. And that having a clock on your time here that's only 3 years long means that you hit the ground running and every day matters. It also means that everything in the org is around speeding those up. So we actively fight against bureaucracy. You do that by having a very small team of incredibly capable people. We get the best of the best in government to run legal, to run contracts, to run finance across the org. So we really have a top tier team here. And then the third crucial thing is the ability to work across fields and across sectors, both outside of government and inside government. So what that means is we don't just fund academics, we also fund startups, we fund industry, we fund nonprofit research organizations. Our entire goal is to find the best on the planet and bring them together as a team to work together. Also, what's interesting here is that in our legislation, we have the ability to have a direct relationship with FDA. So we can fund FDA to do work for us. We can fund positions there because, especially in the healthcare sector, if something's actually going to go from lab to patient, many of those things need to go through FDA. And if we're working on breakthrough technology that FDA hasn't seen before, and we show up fully baked and say, hey, here you go, chances of success are going to be low. And so we engage FDA from day one on everything that we do, finding the right folks there, inviting them to program manager meetings and proposer meetings, really trying to bring them along and also listen to their input on how they work and what's going to work. And at the same time, educate them on what we're building so we can really have that two-way street. So when we get to the end, everybody's ready at the same time. Um,
So
Right.
curious, you mentioned that you had been a program manager at DARPA,
Mhm.
and I wonder if you can tell us what the program was and how did it work for you?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to fund multiple programs. Um, my first one, totally crazy. They thought I was crazy. You have to remember this is like 2010 when I'm there. Is I proposed this thing of using synthetic biology to build new materials. Synthetic biology is now a thing we all know. It's incredible. It's being used in all aspects of the kind of the bioeconomy, I would say. But at the time, people were like, "What is this? What are they doing?" And I like to say it was probably the hardest program I ever had to get through leadership. So when you're a program manager, you bake a program, you go talk to the best people in the field to understand what's happening, how you can drive it forward, what the opportunities are. But to get it finally through an ARPA, you have to go up to what's called Tech Council or the Star Chamber, as we would call it, where you have to defend it through across all the leadership. And it was very challenging because it was such a out there idea. Nothing was being done like this at DARPA or many other places. But what was incredible was the program ended up outlasting me and running for about 14 years past me,
Wow.
which is really incredible to be able to build a field like that. The second program I got to do, true story. So since my background is a material scientist, I was originally in the microsystems technology office at DARPA. And I got a proposal from John Rogers, who was then at UIUC, talking about disintegratable electronics for tracking wound healing and other type of healing within the body. Thought, sure, why not? And so we wrote 250K check really quickly. And he called me up 2 or 3 weeks, months later and said, hey, so I found something really interesting. They don't just disintegrate, they actually dissolve. And dissolvable electronics are interesting for a number of national security um, issues and challenges. And that program ended up deploying to the field within 5 years,
Wow.
which is
Wow.
which is just shows you the speed at which an ARPA can move, and to have that experience of really seeing something that you start really in the lab with a 250K check, and then 5 years later it's being deployed into the field with our warfighters, that's unbelievable.
So you talk about high risk, high reward. So that must mean sometimes it doesn't work.
Very
Did you
true.
bat 1,000 in your program manager role?
Sorry, did I end up?
Did you bat 1,000? Did every one of the programs that you championed
Um,
succeed?
Programs, yes, but maybe not performers. Uh,
Okay. Tell us about that.
so as a program manager, you do a lot of active program management. What does that mean? It means I had every performer I had on speed dial on my phone, and I was going to visit them. And it's not because I'm saying, what have you done for me lately? It's because, hey, what's going on? How is this working? Where do you need help? But sometimes certain scientific or technical paths just don't work out, or sometimes there's folks who don't want to work in the ARPA model. They don't like the timelines and the milestones. And so at that point, we say, you know what? This isn't working out. Let's wind it down. And, we never cut funding on one day. We work it out. We talk about a wind down. How can we get the most out of this? And sometimes it also means that the performer might pivot. They might say, okay, this isn't working. Let's try a totally new path. And so we work on that together to see if it can work, and we change the statement of work. But that it is necessary. It is necessary to do that because of the quantity of dollars that we are spending. So a program can often be 100 million to 200 million dollars. And that means individual awards can be anywhere from 2 million to 10 million to 20 million sometimes. Very large dollar amounts. And so we have to be able to call it together and say, hey, this isn't working. But that also means on the flip side, when something really is working and going gangbusters, we can plus that up very easily. And so it really requires this kind of rebalancing all the time, and also just honesty with everyone. It isn't personal, just a path isn't working out. And what we really want to do is free up people's time to work on the best problems possible.
So thinking about the importance of program managers, is it possible for folks who are sort of writing up a proposal to have an interaction during that write-up period, or do they need to present you a full package? How do you think about that?
So there's a couple different ways that proposals come in. One is a traditional route, which is we launch a program. We call it an ISO, essentially, Innovative Solutions Offering. And we say, hey, there's this big challenge. We think that there could be this big solution out there. Here's our goals. Here's kind of some of the technical path we're imagining, but we don't tell you exactly how to do it. And we want to achieve this. Send us your best ideas. Now, if a program manager is doing their job, they will have gone around and met a lot of the community ahead of time. But of course, there's people you haven't spoken to, and you love those people too. So we'll have what's called a proposers day, where we announce the program, but that's an opportunity for everyone to actually go talk to the PM at that time and ask questions about it, et cetera. But really, the best thing that any potential proposer can do is go find a program manager and talk to them. Program managers are naturally curious in general. We want to know what's going on. I know when I was forming my synthetic biology program, I tried to meet everybody in the field and get feedback and truly understand. And that also helps to build relationships and understand who are the people who are going to be really into this and want to work with you. Um, it's easy to find a program manager. Come to a proposers day. We're going to be holding a big conference in the fall where everyone is invited. And at the same time, you can reach out simply by email, first name dot last name at arpa-h.gov. We have a really easy way to find our emails, just first name dot last name at arpa-h.gov. Another th and you can do this even if you just, we also have what's called the Open BAA or the Open ISO, where anyone can apply. If you think you have a great idea, you can do it. Typically, those tend to be smaller awards. We see them as kind of test beds, new ideas to try. Sometimes they are larger, but again, the best thing to do is go find someone and talk to them. Talk to an office director and say, hey, what's interesting to you? I'm thinking about this thing. Um, that's really the most effective way at the time. Now, an important thing to note is because everything is program manager driven, if we don't have a program manager in that area with a deep interest in it, we may not fund it. And that's because everything we have to do, everything we do has to be top tier. If there's not a program manager who's going to champion it, who really understands it, who's going to be able to push it forward, we may not fund that area simply because we don't have anyone to lead the area. And so, how do you solve that problem? Send us a program manager. That literally is that we're always hiring for program managers for phenomenal people. If you know someone in your field and you're like, hey, I think they'd love to do this for 3 years, send them in. That's the best thing to do.
And is it a 3 year with a possible extension, or is it 3 years and you're out?
It's 3 years with a possible extension. Nobody's guaranteed it. And some people, they're 3 years in and out. They got other things they want to do. They came to get this done. They're going to do it. And then they go out and they want to start a company or go back to academia or whatever it might be. Other folks, they're rocking and rolling and they want to stay. And we're like, this is awesome. Please stay. And we can extend 1, 2, 3 years more.
Okay, great. And if I'm an expert in the field and I want to help shape the ISO before it's actually issued, is that something that people can do as well in working with program managers?
Yeah, absolutely. I
Just reach
mean,
out to the
we
program
craft
manager.
it to exactly, just you because we want to create what we call building the sandbox where lots of people can play.
So as you think about, you think in these short bursts of work right now, and I know you have a big conference coming up, you said, and we'll talk about that in a second. What are your top priorities
Yeah.
today?
Yeah. So coming in, I came with three priorities, and those have remained the same. So number one is winning the biotech race. Um, One of the major challenges, especially with the rise of China, is we've seen China move from a low-cost manufacturer and supplier of APIs and generics to really becoming much more sophisticated along every part of the innovation pipeline, whether it's R&D, discovery. They have an incredible clinical trials network. We see many, many US folks going over for their clinical trials network at this point because it's half the cost and 2 to 5 times faster. And getting that first in human data is so valuable that a lot of folks, just for economic reasons, don't want to do it in the US anymore, which is a major problem for the United States. And so what we've also seen now, though, is a flood of capital out of the US into China. And so what that means is that biotechs can't get the funding that they need. VCs aren't funding things in the US. And that also means that it starts to hollow out our research base as well, because if students aren't going to be able to get a job afterwards, why are they going to go major in biomedical engineering or virology or any of these spaces if there isn't a position for them afterwards? And so that's a major challenge. And so one of our top priorities, and we have programs along that entire pipeline, is really figuring out not just how we can be as fast as China. We're probably not going to win that game. It is how can we be fast and predictable along every step of that? So we have programs looking at everything from Apex, which is how can we make sure that we can design proteins that essentially can target viral families. So you can imagine going after all herpes viruses. It means we have programs like Catalyst, which are saying, how can I do nearly all preclinical safety and tox studies in silico? So I don't have to spend time on animal models and I don't have to spend time developing a drug that's going to fail a safety and tox study. We have programs like Vandibody, which is one-shot antibody design that is based on viral sequence alone that has been very successful. And so we have antibodies, yes, against Ebola, but now also against all the different strains of hantavirus, for example. And then we have some larger efforts coming out, and I don't want to say too much about them, really thinking about how can we do in silico trials based on the wealth of data that we already have in the US and have much shorter in human trials. So that's a huge focus of the agency because if we don't fix this biotech innovation pipeline from start to finish, a lot of our other efforts may not matter if there's not the funding to actually develop them in the US. Second major priority is around longevity and reversing aging. The reason we're so focused on this is that aging is a major risk factor for so many of the diseases, and especially diseases of aging, everything from neurodegeneration to cardiovascular, all the way to metabolic to cancers, etc. And so the idea is even if you can just reverse biological aging by a year, we can get so much economic value out of that by not only healthcare savings, but also productivity savings. And there's a report out there, basically estimating about $38 trillion in economic value just by reversing aging. Um, that's still a very young field, but it's come to a point where we believe we can really push things forward there, improve them out. We have a major program called Prosper, which is looking at how do you actually run aging clinical trials, testing so many of these compounds that are either being used off-label, have been proven in animal models, and see what happens in humans, but be able to do it in 3 to 4 years. We also have the Front program, which has been launched, although the awards I don't think have been um, uh, put out yet. But looking at how can you, for especially whether it's TBI or neurodegenerative diseases where you have damaged portions of the brain, regrow neocortical tissue and literally put a neocortical tissue graft made from your own iPSC cells into the brain. Exactly. I mean, it sounds like science fiction. It's just incredible. It
Huge.
really is just incredible. And then our last category of work is what we call defeating devastating diseases. And these are diseases where either they've been completely overlooked or their area, like there isn't a great economic model for them, especially rare diseases, pediatric cancer, but also diseases where we spend billions and billions of dollars as a nation. So, especially the neurodegenerative diseases, as well as mental health. And so we're very focused on that aspect and thinking about what are the new approaches, what are the breakthrough kind of approaches that we can take here, where we can take a big swing, we're willing to take the risk to try to push these forward and actually solve these problems once and for all.
I want to take the first one you mentioned as sort of an example for, I think, a question a lot of folks have, which is sort of the interaction with the rest of government and
Yeah.
the NIH in particular, maybe. So if you think about the bio pipeline and winning that race
Hmm.
and the hollowing out of scientists, some of that has to do with the unpredictability of funding that we've seen in the last year or so from the NIH, proposals to cut it, slowing of grants, that kind of stuff. And I don't want to ask you to talk out of school, but how how do you think about your project in light of the fact that there are these other forces happening right now with the NIH?
Yeah. Look, we can do what we can do, which is our funding has actually sped up out of ARPA-H. Our budget has remained robust, not nearly as large as NIH, but remember, a lot of NIH's budget is determined by, and directions are determined by Congress. We have the freedom to go into the areas that we think are most fruitful. The third area that I see is look, if we have a robust base of startups, we have fast clinical trials, that naturally is going to drive talent here. That naturally is going to create job opportunities and other things that will still be driving folks to be want to major in those majors and get the education to go work in those fields. So I can't solve the entire problem, but I can focus
Yeah.
on the parts that I know I can solve and that I know are going to make a difference.
So, my background before I came to this organization was in Alzheimer's, and you've got of the three programs you mentioned, I think all three of them could apply to Alzheimer's.
That is very true.
NIH also has lots of investment in Alzheimer's.
They
Do
do.
you think about trying to co Alzheimer's is just a case. I'm not trying to talk about just Alzheimer's, but as a specific case or any other case you want to think about, how do you coordinate with, or do you
Yeah.
coordinate with what the NIH is also doing?
We always do. And one of the ways that you even have to get a program approved here is shown us that you've spoken to the folks at NIH or EPA or NSF or whatever they may be. and be able to show us that, okay, here's their approach, or here's what they're focused on, here's what they're not focused on. Like a very exciting area is obviously cell and gene therapies, and especially what they're calling now genetic surgery. The baby KJ example is excellent. But for some of the neurodegenerative diseases, both ApoE4 carriers, as well as Huntington's disease, where you have the repeats, the ability to go in and base pair edit with these genetic surgeries to either shift out the ApoE4 to an ApoE2 or to put in stop codon so you don't have the repeats for Huntington's, that's a crazy hard idea. And we don't see anyone funding that. And we can take the risk and we can put focused funding on it. We can take the big swing that it requires to really say, is this feasible? Is this possible? Let's go after it with a really concerted effort. Like we cannot boil the ocean. And I think NIH plays an important role in seeding a lot of the basic research, foundational knowledge, but we can then take it and say, how do we drive this as fast as possible to actually showing that this is a feasible route that we can get it through the clinic?
So follow that example you just gave for a second.
Wow.
Genetic editing. Where did that originate in the ARPA world? Where did it come from? How is it gone? Just so folks get an idea of how your agency works. Maybe
Yeah.
that one's a good case to study.
Yeah. Um, Obviously, this is a fast-moving field, and the baby
Yeah.
cage example was the example of this is no longer a science question. It is much more, I mean, there still is science and more to do there, but we know that it is feasible. We know that it can work. Now it's a question of, for us, thinking about it, which is how can we tune this? How can we think about, obviously, we can't take every single specific genetic therapy that's tuned to each patient and take it through FDA. So, for example, in the Thrive program, which Daria Federica is running, is how can we think about building a genetic platform? And that platform gets approved in FDA, but then we're able to individually tune it for each patient, and that won't have to go through the FDA, for example. So building that kind of approach, or building the approach of right now it costs millions of dollars. Well, that is never going to scale. So how do we bring the cost down? So that means lower cost delivery vehicles. It means smarter manufacturing. So we're looking at AI/ML manufacturing of genetic therapies. It means thinking about how could we even think about a distributed approach to manufacturing these so that you don't have to go to a specialty center. You can think about going anywhere and having this done for you. So that's kind of how we think about it, which is, okay, what are the blockers to being able to deploy this more broadly today? And what can we bring to the table to be able to push that forward?
Interesting. So you're fairly young as an agency, but you've been around long enough to maybe have some successes to brag
Yes.
on. Is there anything
Yes.
you want to brag on today,
Oh,
Doctor?
multiple. Now you're asking me to choose between children. So, one of the first programs, I will not take any credit for this, but launched at ARPA-H was the Nitro program. Ross Ulrich launched this program, and he said, look, we don't have anything that's good for osteoarthritis, despite it affecting so many people across the US. Um, but what if it would be possible to not have to do a surgery on someone? What if it would be possible to do something really simple, like a single injection, maybe an annual injection that enables both bone and cartilage to regrow? So, what's really exciting, and we were featured in the New York Times about a month ago, front page of the New York Times for this, is we have now shown that capability. Not in humans yet, but in small and large animals. We've now shown the capability to regrow both bone and cartilage. So, awesome result. Likes to tell the story of he went around and talked to a bunch of VCs and other folks, and they all said, no, that's not possible. You cannot do this. And now he has multiple teams doing it, which is just awesome. Um, Thea is another really exciting program. Cal Roberts is the program manager behind that. And Cal basically said, I want to be able to transplant eyes for somebody who can't visually see and had their eyesight damaged, essentially, for a variety of different reasons. That requires two major things. One, being able to keep a donor eye alive outside the body. So he's now shown that he can keep it alive for or his team has been able to keep the donor eye alive for over 24 hours. Number two, you have to show that you can regrow the optic nerve. And so this is hot off the presses, literally last week. They were able to show in rats that they could completely cut the optic nerve. and then have using a special nerve wrap and a variety of different cofactors grow that optic nerve to not only heal the gap, but all the way back into the brain and restore sight, which has never been shown before. And so now we're cooking with gas, right? And so then the next steps are to show this now in a pig to be able to show that we can do this. And then it's be able to put everything together and show we can take a donor eye and we can regrow the entire optic nerve back to the brain and restore sight. And so, this program's only 2 years old, probably less than that at this point, and it's just incredible what he's been able to demonstrate.
And what if it takes longer than 6? What do you do? You've got a program manager who's
Yeah,
been championing
yeah,
this. You can extend them, but science is not always as fast as you'd like it to be, despite all of your
totally,
efforts, right? What happens?
totally. And you're not going to be able to always predict how things go, for
Yeah.
better or for worse. One of the great things about an ARPA, it's creative destruction. So you have to have such great program that somebody else wants to come and continue it. Somebody wants to take it over, because they see the value in it. And so that creates a whole nother high bar. So, especially if the program's winding down and somebody says, no, we should do a phase 2 of this. This is really exciting. We should continue to build on it, or it's still going. We need to be able to do this. Somebody has to volunteer to take it over and continue to grow it. Uh, and so that's the other part of it. And when people hear this, they're like, "Oh my God, a PM might leave in 3 years. What am I going to do?" I will
Yeah.
say that's why we're so tough at the very beginning on choosing the best programs. Where it's very hard to get through leadership. We really beat up ideas quite a bit to make sure they're at the level, which it is a highly impactful program that shows that like we're making progress. Let's get this done. And so more times than not, there is somebody who is going to raise their hand and be like, I want to take this. I want to keep running with it. I think we're really going to get something.
And your incentive structure isn't that people have to invent it first. They can take over something that someone else sort of invented and take it to the next
Absolutely.
level, and they get credit for it.
Totally. Totally. Because it is about active program management here. And I think another important thing to say is, as I tell my program managers all the time, our job, your job is not to have the best idea. Your job is to find the best ideas. And that's a really important thing to understand.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I want to ask you, there's two questions. You mentioned, I'll ask you about one of them. You can't have a conversation in 2026 without talking about AI. You mentioned AI ML in the context of one of your examples earlier, but
Yeah.
for me, AI, everybody wants to talk about it. Often people think about LLMs, but obviously it's got a much broader scope than that.
Yeah.
What's the most promising thing in your world of ARPA-H?
Hmm.
What's the most promising AI use that you've seen? And what's the thing that you would like AI to be able to do that it's not quite there?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so we get the question all the time, what are you going to do about AI? Well,
Yeah,
there's billions of dollars going into this field, so I'm definitely not building a foundational model.
yeah,
Really, where we look for is the gaps. And so there's two areas that we really look to. Number one is, you have all the best AI teams over here saying, this is going to transform medicine. And then you go into your doctor's office and there's no AI. It's a giant chasm. And so a lot of what we think about is how do we drive this into clinical practice that is actually going to be useful? So we have a program called Advocate. It was developed by Hader Rourke, who is a cardiologist. And it came from the fact that he was serving a county of 250,000 people. He does not have time to see everyone who needs to see a cardiologist, manage their heart disease. One of the large, I think it is the biggest killer in the US. And he said, what if I could, and it's not like we don't know how to manage it. I was shocked to learn that like less than 3% of patients are even on the right medications and the right dosages. So he said, hey, I would love a clinician extender where I can have an AI monitoring everyone that I need to be able to take care of. Make sure they're doing the right things, managing their disease. So, first of all, that's going to reduce his patient load. And number two, also identify who does need to go see him. Now, obviously, like it's not taking over his job, it's helping him to make sure patients are getting the care that they need for people he cannot see. He simply cannot, there's not enough time in the day. And second, it's being able to ensure that when a patient does need to come see him, it gets his full attention. And so he's building this, and this is an incredible program for so many reasons because there is no agentic AI systems that have gone through FDA yet. And one of the reasons for that is there isn't a pathway today. And so we've been working closely with FDA to create the first agentic AI that can go through FDA and be clinically approved, which is going to be really exciting when we're able to do that. The second major area for us is using it to really supercharge being able to take all these disparate data that we have. So, for example, in the Catalyst program, we have lots of labs that have been doing preclinical animal models. We have labs that need to be able to translate that and mash it up to what's happening in human models. You can't do that without compute. And why this is so powerful is that I don't think a single company could do this. We need to stitch across all these different companies and build a platform for everyone. And so these cases where we can use AI to build platforms for everyone are incredibly, incredibly powerful, and partially because of our role as a convener and able to get this data from so many different sources.
That's very cool. Yeah. So one other area that's kind of maybe finally becoming a hot topic, women's health has been sort of historically underinvested in. Um, what's the ARPA-H bit in that?
Yeah, I mean, it's an area I care about a ton. I built a company in it.
Yeah,
Obviously, we had the Sprint for Women's Health in the first few years of ARPA-H. We had some incredible work come out of that, both academic researchers, but also being able to, Cellmatics, which we funded, which is, a drug targeting AMH to extend ovarian lifetime. That got sold to Gideon Richter, which is amazing, big pharma company out of Germany. We obviously did work with Gamito as well, looking at how can we really revolutionize basically balancing hormones after menopause and making sure you have enough hormonal support postmenopausal. And then we have efforts going on. What we really try to think about is where are the really big no gaps in our knowledge about women's health? I think
yeah.
that's the biggest thing we can do. Like we now know cardiovascular disease manifests and heart attacks manifest differently in women. We knew that neurodegenerative diseases manifest differently in women. And so a lot of our programs bake in specifically looking at male versus female in order to understand those differences. And then we do have programs under development that are looking at women specific kind of challenges, whether it is how do we extend ovarian lifetime? There's a great program, MOX, which has come out, which is how do we make the US the safest place in the world to have a baby? Which I think is just incredible. Really looking at can we diagnose hypertension earlier and can we make sure that we only do the necessary C-sections, things like that. But we'd love to recruit PMs who really have that very deep technical and scientific knowledge to say, hey, what are the really big questions in women's health that we don't even have data on today, or that we need to understand the science behind it?
So I could keep asking you questions and have a conversation for the next 2 hours, but we have about 25 minutes left or something, 20 minutes left. And I want to give the folks who tuned in, we've got several hundred people online right now. And my colleague, Aaron Darbuz, is going to help us moderate that. So, Aaron, I'm not exactly sure how we do this, but I will turn it over to you because you are.
Hi, Russ, and thank you, Dr. Jackson. This has been amazing so far. And I want to give a shout out to Eliana Barnett for answering a lot of questions in our chat in our Q&A box. So thank you, Eliana, for moving some of those along.
Amazing.
And so, Russ, we can kind of just go between, you've got some pre-submitted questions on your doc, and I've got some in the Q&A. So I'll start with the first Q&A from Chris. With the alarming trend of early age onset colorectal cancer cases, is ARPA-H involved in any initiatives to determine the cause of the increase or to improve cancer treatments and patient quality of life, as innovation and progress in this area seems to be stagnant?
Yes. So we have a couple of different efforts that touch on this. One is Poseidon, which is how do we catch cancers very, very, very early? Because obviously, especially for colorectal cancer, you don't want to catch it late. You need to catch it immediately, which is why you want to have colonoscopies. But if we remember, colonoscopies are really only for 45 and over. So we need a solution that goes much younger and that has both high sensitivity and specificity at the same time. So Poseidon is looking at, look, let's just catch this as quickly as possible. Um, Tangential but still related is our STOMP program, which is systematic targeting of microplastics. There has been concerning data that has come out, which is linking microplastics to increase in cancers. And there's data coming out of also seeing these kind of enriched in colorectal cancers. Now, we don't know if it's causative. In animal models, we have causative models. In humans, we have associative models. So it's associated with it. So one of the goals of that program is to understand if and which microplastics are causing which harms to the body. So that could be an interesting place for us to look as well. We also have a couple programs, weirdly in longevity, but I think applicable to this as well, looking at looking at antivirals, very potent antivirals. Really interesting data point is HIV patients who have been taking potent antivirals their entire lives have a 50% reduced rate of cancer. So there's some interesting data there as well. And so I think we have multiple different efforts that can make a difference on colorectal cancer because it is concerning that people as young as their 30s are showing up with this.
Russ, you're on mute.
I don't remember muting myself. Dr. Jackson, you're doing a lot. Remind everybody the size of your budget.
Congress appropriated 1.5 billion
It's
in our last budget cycle.
remarkable leverage. I want to ask you, maybe this is a leverage question. We don't live on an island without airplanes, so there's diseases that happen other places often that affect us. And sometimes we just want to help our neighbors. What's the ARPA part of global health? How do you think
Yeah.
about that? And what's your remit?
Yeah. Look, like you said, we live in a world where we don't really have borders anymore. It's very hard to keep a disease out. Whether whether it is hantavirus. I mean, Ebola is slightly easier. I was at DARPA during all of the Ebola work. But there's always something emerging all the time. And we're learning more and more about the downstream effects of having some of these diseases where we thought they weren't so bad, but then we find out later actually they're causing an increase in incidence of things like neurodegenerative diseases or Parkinson's, for example. And so we have multiple efforts focused on it. One of those is Apex, like I talked about before, which is really thinking about how do you design antigens that not just go after one virus, but a whole genus. So all of herpes viruses, for example, being able to knock them all down at once and being able to do this computationally so that you don't have to do, well, this version and this version and this version and this version. You can do the genus. The second category is like we talked about one-shot antibody design. So bringing this very relevant today. So I was at DARPA when Ebola was raging the last time. And we were very concerned about it. And there was an American doctor here in the US who had caught it and recovered, and we had to wait weeks and weeks because we wanted his protective antibodies because that would give us something that we could immediately give to frontline healthcare workers and to contacts who might come into contact with folks and provide them essentially immunity for 6 to 8 weeks, roughly. That's a lengthy process, obviously, and you have to hope people recover, and then you have access to their antibodies, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's why this whole Vandabody project that we called is one-shot antibody designed based on viral sequence alone. And so when we had this, for example, the latest outbreak of hantavirus, the Andes version, one, we already had things banked based on other things that we learned about. And then the second time, once we got the viral sequence, we could immediately generate an antibody in days, an antibody design. And so that ability to move so quickly is just incredible. And then to be able to put those antibodies out and provide protection immediately.
I want to follow on that. So either thinking about now or thinking about when you were doing this at DARPA with Ebola, I don't think that as we think about global health outbreaks, ARPA-H or DARPA is not the first government agency one thinks about, right? And you must have to be as successful as you were on this, have to coordinate with CDC, with NIH, with I don't know who else. Back when there was a USAID, maybe them. What, how does that all work?
We do coordinate. We try to let everyone know what we're doing. One of the reasons that people look to an ARPA is just simply because of the speed at which we can move. We just get it done. We literally called up the team and they're like, actually, we're already on it, right? We're like, we're pivoting you to this immediately. This is going to be your test case. They, there, because of the lack of bureaucracy, you can respond so quickly to events on the ground that we're not stymied in other ways. There's plenty of funding. We can plus them up if they need additional funding. This does not take a long time. It's very immediate here. And so I think it's the fact that people understand, and especially DARPA, that you can move quickly and you can get it done. You can execute. It doesn't require committee after committee after committee. It's not done like that here.
What if a scientist in the field has an idea that they think would be useful in that event where it's
Yeah.
really time constrained,
Yeah.
uh, do you all welcome input then, or does it have to be a
Yes. If
baked project already?
yeah. I mean, as anyone can imagine, you get a lot of people coming out of the woodwork, but we want to hear the ideas. We want to be like, look, I got this. I'm ready to go. Here we are. We
Yeah.
want to know. We may move forward or not, but it's very helpful to understand what's being done in the world. And we find out, what is BARDA doing here? What is NIH doing? Where is CDC on this? Really to try to, we don't want to duplicate work. Like we don't want to waste time and energy. But if there is not a solution ready to go, there's no faster place to get it done than an ARPA.
So a scientist listening to this right now who has an idea on how to do something with Ebola or hantavirus that maybe they don't feel like is getting the light of day,
Yeah.
you all be interested.
We're interested. A lot of what we focus on and why we're able to respond so quickly is that we're not just focusing on Ebola. We're not just focusing on hantavirus. We go steps back from that upstream so that we can be more agnostic as to which challenge might come up because we can't predict the future. A lot of what we think about is what's the upstream thing that we can change that is going to make all the downstream really fast for us to be able to address.
Makes a lot of sense. Aaron, what's next on the questions?
Well, you know what? We've got a lot of questions in the chat about project managers, their work. If you could speak to, the importance of program managers, how your recruiting efforts are going, the onboarding process, and then sharing a little bit more information about the public event. But there's lots of folks saying, can they work with folks in Canada? Or, do program managers help shape programs before they're released? And lots of questions about program
So I
managers.
think we heard a
Okay.
lot of interest, a lot of about how important program managers are. So
I love it.
I don't think we need to
I
reiterate
love it.
that.
Okay.
But
Program manager is literally the best job in the world.
yeah,
Having been one, it's so fun. And it's fun because it is challenging. It is fast, but you get to work with the best people in the entire world. And everything is bottoms up. This is not a top down. I don't go to a PM and say, like, you're doing this now. That's not my job here. My job is to also find the best people with the best ideas. We set vision and direction, but it's up to the PMs to actually go formulate these. So program managers can come from anywhere. We require that they have an advanced technical degree. We require that they have had at least one job out of postdoc. Many people come here and they've had many, many jobs. We have people all across the spectrum. We have an early stage academic who might come here. We also have people who've had just incredible careers, right? Leaders of large companies. They've done very well in life and they're choosing to come here because they understand that they can work on the most important problems here and they can just run. Our job is to knock down barriers for them so they can just run. Now, it does take a special phenotype. Um, you know, they have to be a little bit entrepreneurial. Wherever they might have been, there's lots of ways to be entrepreneurial. They have to be deeply technically competent. They have to not be afraid of risk. Um, a lot of folks, due to wherever they've been, or maybe only getting NIH funding, have really been trained in this way of don't take too much risk. You might fail, right? And then you're going to get knocked down. Um, we really need people who like to take that risk, who like to swing for the fences, because that is what this organization is built to do, because other orgs cannot do that. So people who like to take risk, who are really have a strong vision for what they want to accomplish. They understand it's not about their idea, it's about finding the best idea. Now, of course, their brain is going to synthesize all that and come forward, but you have to have a little bit of humbleness here and really be able to listen to other people and listen to the experts in the field. And you may disagree, that's fine, but you have to be able to synthesize all of that. And you also need to understand how to take vision to reality. You need to be able to execute. There's so many brilliant people in the world, but you can't be the brilliant, absent-minded professor if you come here. You're not going to like it. And so it really does take a little bit of a phenotype, but yet there's lots of different types of PMs here. Some are gregarious and have incredible careers. Some are so smart and so good at it, but quiet individuals, but man, they get the job done. It's just incredible and everything in between. Um, to apply, you can apply through our website. You can have a conversation with a PM and kind of do a warm intro. What we try to do is a very rapid hiring process so that we don't waste anybody's time, yours or ours. So we try to get to a fast no. So what you do is you have a conversation with an office director and a couple of PMs. Then what we do is we ask you to come up with a program idea and to do a pitch of it to other PMs and office directors as well. And we work with you to be able to do that. We kind of talk to you about the thinking, right? What's your big idea? What problem are you trying to solve with no jargon? Why isn't this already happening? Like, what's the technical barriers? What's new? What's changed in the science and technology world that we can finally think about being able to do this? What are the hard parts of the problem and how are you going to address those, et cetera, et cetera. So really clear kind of explanation of your idea. And if that's all aces, we start the onboarding process. And we try to move that as quickly as possible for everyone here. And then you come in, we try to surround you with great people. So you learn the ropes as quickly as possible, and then you're off to the races. As far as who we fund, we do have a focus on US entities, but of course, there are people across the world who have capabilities or expertise that we just don't have in the US. And so absolutely, we will fund people in Canada, UK, basically any allied country to us. We are open to funding.
Perfect. Let me ask you, there's a question about your changes to the Investor Catalyst Network and what that means for your vision for commercialization. And I don't know if everybody on the call cares about it, but I know some people care deeply about it. So maybe take a minute or two to talk about how
Yeah.
what that's about and how you think about commercialization now.
Yeah. So, having come from the private sector before this, and my chief medical officer also coming from the private sector, and having to go through commercialization, and given the mission of this organization to reach patients as quickly as possible, commercialization is a major priority. If it's a great idea and just a published paper, it won't matter. That's not our mission to publish papers. Our mission is to reach patients and have direct real world impact. And so in congressionally mandated language, we have three hubs, three physical locations for ARPA-H. Our main hub is here in Washington, D.C. We also have a hub in Boston, and we also have a hub in Dallas. All that has remained the same. The challenge was when we came here, and I'll speak, short and plain about this. The amount of money we were spending on things like rents or third-party services was just astronomical for the value that we were getting. And our partners in those states, the people who had put in the proposals, felt similarly as well. They didn't feel like they were getting value. And so we wound down some of the physical aspects and started working directly with the players there and said, let's just do this direct. Let's find space together. Let's figure out what's going to work for you and what's going to work for us. We have a very customer-centric approach, which is who cares if we have a hub if it's actually not working for the people who are there at the hub or the people in the state that or city that kind of won the hub. And so we've built incredible relationships with both the Boston ecosystem and the Dallas ecosystem. We also revamped our office of commercialization. When we came in, our first question was, show us your metrics. How are you doing? How do you know if you're successful? What are the services you're offering? How do they use? What's the impact? And unfortunately, we got nothing. And so we said, okay, we need to revamp this because if we're going to do it, we need to do it right and we need to deliver. So we've brought in leaders who have commercialization expertise, tech transfer expertise, And we're really looking at this as an organization that works with both PMs and all of our performers to think about and work together on who can we connect you with on the regulatory side. Do you need VC introductions? How do we get you prepared for regulatory, et cetera, et cetera? So we've really focused very tightly on doing this right because I think many times in the federal government, you can see commercialization offices where it's not clear they're having an impact. It's very easy to do wrong. It's hard to do right. But
So
if we
how
don't do
will you know if these changes are doing it right? Like what's your key metric,
yeah,
one or two key metrics to know if
yeah,
this is actually working?
yeah, yeah. What's the next follow-on event, right? Whether that's because depending on the life cycle of where we're funding, it could be follow-on event is um, they get VC funding, right? Follow-on event could be the technology gets licensed. Follow-on event could be the company gets bought. Follow-on event could be that a company spins out of a university to actually commercialize the research that we've been funding. Follow-on event could be actually company, launches product into market. Those are all the follow-on events, and we define them at the beginning. Like, what's the expected event at the end, and how can we do it? And so we have companies, we have fund people that we funded that have spun out companies, multiples. Cellmatics, for example, got sold to Gideon Richter. Really exciting. One of our programs has multiple major healthcare companies trying to license their technology, which is great. Obviously, we like to see that people get follow-on funding after a key part that we can do is really buy down technical risks to make it investable for folks who have those. They have to get financial returns for their LPs, for example. And so we think about it, what is that transition point and can we get them through it? Our job is to basically, especially being good stewards of taxpayer dollars, which is the sooner we can get somebody else to take this over and fund it because they think it's viable, the better. That's the better for everyone.
Great. All right. There's a lot more questions in the chat. There's questions that I have, but we're running out of time. I want to give you a chance to talk. You said you had a big event coming up, a big meeting coming up this fall.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I don't think we've officially announced it, so I don't want to. I know my team's going to kill me.
Uh-oh.
But yeah, they're giving
Breaking
me
news
thumbs
here at
up.
Research America.
Breaking news. But one of the great things that we can do, and actually we go around and try to do this at what we call ecosystem trips, but our job is to come out and meet everyone and also talk to people about what ARPA-H is, how to work with us, and at the same time also showcase some exemplars of what a program looks like, what are the results, hear from other performers. And so we're going to be putting together an event in the fall, and I can't say too much more about that until we officially announce it. Where we're going to be able to have a lot of that, hear program managers speak, learn about some of our results, learn about how to work with us. At the same time, program managers are always out on the road, speaking at conferences, being at universities, meeting with companies. If you hear that there's going to be an ARPA-H event, please attend. We've done a couple ecosystem trips. We're going to continue to do those. We did one in Boston. We did one at Dallas. We're going to have one at Bio in San Diego, which is coming up. We're going to be at Research Triangle Park. So we have multiple of these coming up, and it's just a great opportunity because it's 4 or 5 PMs. It's myself, it's our chief medical officer, it's other parts of the team are there, and the whole point is to engage with people who have great ideas and figure out how we can work together.
And if you have a great idea, first name dot last name at ARPA-H.gov, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Dr. Alicia Jackson, thank you so much for spending time with us at
Thank
Research
you.
America today. Thanks for all the great answers to these questions. And we look forward to talking to you again. And good luck with your secret event in the fall.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I appreciate everyone attending.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody, for joining.